All right, so Steve Spurrier's got some stuff to say about the Gators. This is an article in the Jacksonville Times Union about a lot of stuff. Actually, it's very well written by Gene Fournette at the Times Union up in Jacksonville, or down in Jacksonville. Is it up in Jacksonville? Like I'm in Miami. But here's the critical quote. If you're keeping score at home, here's Spurrier saying, being quoted as saying, there's a feeling around the Gators of what the heck are we doing? There's a lot of questions that I don't have the answers to about organization. Just because you hire the most people doesn't mean you're going to win. All these extra people, I question how much that really helps. Billy Napier is a good guy who works his tail off. I like Billy, good family man, but we do wish the organization was a little bit more tidy. Listen, I mean, it sounds to me like Billy Napier's lost Steve Spurrier, which is not a surprise considering, Spurrier is about as big a Gator as there is out there that's not named Tim Tebow. Look, it's bad down there right now. I mean, this. I would encourage you to read this article. Clearly if you're a Florida person, but if you're a Georgia fan, I mean, it's good. It's good to know. Listen, I've been talking about this for a while, and just because I own Dawg Post, people say, well, no, listen, pay attention. We say the same things about Georgia that when it's bad at Georgia. Believe me, it's just not been as bad at Georgia lately as it's been for the Gators this last decade. I mean, it's been rough, but this is not a good quote. If someone's saying this about your program, it's not good. And particularly a guy who is arguably the second best or third best coach. He's not worse than the third best coach all time in the SEC. He's saying there's a feeling around the Gators, what the heck are we doing? Man, listen, that's not good. But listen, the proof is in the pudding. The results speak for themselves. The Gators are just not where they need to be. And I mean, I don't know how many times I got to say this. They need to take it more seriously. You cannot have what's going on down there in football. The fan base is not passionate about it right now at all. And it's a fickle fan base to begin with. A lot of Georgia folks only remember the 90s against the Gators. That's kind of all they remember. They and this is going to sound like I'm putting Florida down, but this is really what it is. That place Jacksonville was a hall of nightmares for about 20 years. But not the 20 years before that or everything since, the 10 years since that time. I mean, when Spurrier and Urban Meyer are your head coach, you're going to win a lot of games. And they did that at the behest of the Dogs. I think Georgia won 2 games against those 2 coaches. Yeah, that's a lot of wins going. That's a lot of losses for Georgia. So people forget that those were the glory years for Florida. And, when I say were, I mean past tense, past tense. That's long gone. What you're seeing now is also probably, I don't hesitate to say this. This is about as bad as it can get at Florida. I don't think they're going to 4-8. They could go 4-8 this season, but this is as bad as it's going to get. They're not going to rock out at 2-10. They're not going to become Arkansas overnight. Florida is a national brand still. And, they have people everywhere who are going to make sure they talk about the Gators all the time. Laura, I knew Laura by a different name years ago. I don't remember Laura McKeeman's real name now, her actual name, on ESPN, Gator. Tim Tebow, Gator. You're going to hear from Spurrier all the time, Gator. I mean, it's just like Georgia. You got Pollock out there. You've got, oh my gosh, now going off, Matt Stinscombe. There's plenty of people in broadcasting that are, Georgia people or at ESPN, whatever. Mark Schlabach went to Georgia. There's a lot of that. You're going to see that, hear that. So Florida's not just going to go away. They're too big and powerful, but they're not where they need to be right now. And they've hired to me 2 of the last 3 coaches that were not fits for Florida. which is Jim McElwain and now Billy Napier. Those were not the right fit for Florida. Dan Mullen was, and the problem at Florida too is their arch rival has the best coach in college football right now, and that's not good either. But you know, Georgia dealt with that for 10 years with Spurrier and however many with Urban, I can't remember. But Urban didn't do Florida any favors at all. And the other question that you kind of come away from this is over time, the Georgia perception of Florida, again, lately for younger people, has been based specifically on the nightmare that was the 1990s. Okay, getting your brain beat in any number of ways, only winning in 1997 by 20 points, only and after that being the better team, but losing more often than not the decade after that in 2010s. Okay, with 2020 the 2000s. Like in 2002, 2003, 2005, going down there with the better team and losing. So that's been a problem that was a problem for Georgia. But Florida's never been really the same since Urban left. They just haven't been. And outside of the three wins in a row, between 14, 15, and 16 for the Gators, it's pretty much been slim pickings from 2010 on. Georgia 11, 12, 13, then the Gators for 3 in 14, 15, 16. 17, 18, 19 for the Dogs, 20 for the Gators, 21, 22, 23, and almost certainly 24 for Georgia. I mean, it's been ugly. But that's just that series. You've also got LSU. You've also got, the teams that Florida plays consistently, LSU and Georgia, have been winning national championships 3 of the last 4 years. Florida can't get winning seasons. I think since 19, certainly they had 2 winning seasons in 19 and 20. I do not recall 21, but it wasn't great. And then in 22, 23, I think it's just been bad, and it's not getting better. That's for me. That's the problem. Is you have exacerbated 3 losing seasons in a row for Florida. You have exacerbated the problem, by making the wrong hire in Billy Napier. And my suspicion is the next coach at Florida would be Lane Kiffin. Now, it might not be. It might not be. He is the person that people behind the scenes sort of whisper about. But Lane won't have success there unless Florida gets their house in order, which is exactly what Spurrier is talking about. Here's the quote again. There's a lot of questions that I don't have the answers to about organization. Just because you hire the most people doesn't mean you're going to win. All these extra people, I question how much that really helps. Well, I remember when Jeremy Pruitt had a very heavy hand in what was going on in Georgia. And Jeremy Pruitt had no idea what he was doing. And he put an exclamation point on that when he went to Tennessee. And, you got to know what you're doing. And Nick has always known. I think Dabo knows what he's doing, or did know what he was doing. Kirby certainly does. There are ways to do this, and then there's ways that Florida's doing it. Alabama, I don't think, is just going to fall off a cliff. Okay? You've got to find the right you got to find the right way to do it at your place. At Florida, they've been scaring. They've let Georgia zoom out in front of them. They've let Georgia care about football way more than they care about football. It's a problem. Go to Jacksonville. Go to the games. Florida fans from certainly 2017, but I would even argue, in like 11, 12, and 13, it was thinning out. I mean, they're not selling out games in Gainesville. They are not selling out games at the Swamp. Now, some of the big games they do. And then let me just add this too. And Florida is always going to be the big dog in the state, no matter how much UCF, which is, come on, no matter how much, Miami and Florida State want to, the Gators are the biggest college deal in the state. And arguably, although I don't think this is true. Arguably, they might be the biggest organization in the state in terms of just fans, because I think the Dolphins are a pretty big deal, and I think to some degree any NFL franchise, not the Jags, but any NFL franchise, which would be Miami and Tampa Bay, they're just bigger. But Georgia's bigger than the Falcons are in Georgia, so they've always got advantages. But that job is trickier than people think. It's trickier than people realize. And it has to be said that what I'm about to say has to be said. It's starting to look like only super great coaches can win at Florida for an extended period of time. Because, when you think about the 80s, Florida never winning an SEC championship until Spurrier got there, the 70s and the 80s, and even the 60s, just frankly, the failure of it. Florida has double the population of Georgia. I mean, it's a much larger state. And this just doesn't make any sense to me, that you would have this much difficulty with a state that's so invested in sports. I mean, Florida loves sports as a state. But the Gators are just not run. Scott Strickland should be let go. That's what the former Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse should let him Ben. It's time for a change, and then you can take it from there. But I just Billy Napier is not working at Florida. Billy Napier is not going to work at Florida. Okay, but you're gonna have problems. But we're sitting here talking about Florida. Okay, they should not be in Texas A&M territory of failure with the amount of resources they have around them. The Florida university apparatus should let the boosters do their thing. And if they don't, they will never be on top of Kirby Smart. I'm going to tell you that right now. I mean, even if they do, I think it's going to be hard. But and I say this too, and people want to say whatever they want to about Mike White. Florida didn't fire him. He left. Now, why did he leave? I mean, there could be any number of reasons, but why did he go to Georgia? Like, that's not a win for Florida. That looks way worse. That looks way worse for Florida than anything else. You weren't going to fire him. It was well past the season ending when he left. So one of your two major sports coaches left for your arch rival. So, I mean, it ain't working at Georgia yet for him at all. But, let's not act like that's not a black eye, too. So, there's a lot going on wrong at Florida. But primarily, they have the wrong football coach for their program. And unless they can get Urban Meyer with all of his health conditions back, unless they can, Spurrier obviously is frustrated. I don't blame him. He loves Florida. He loves the Gators. He loves, he loves everything about that. And that's where he went to college. I get it. But, this is why, it can't just be, oh, what does Kirby think? It's got to be everybody, man. Kirby can lead and, take the flag down the field and, say, we got to do these things. But somebody's got to execute them. And, Florida hasn't had an indoor practice facility for the vast majority of its time. We're talking about Florida here, where there's lightning all the time and there's rain all the time and there's hurricane. You have to have an indoor facility. It's just we don't need it. We're the Gators. No. We don't need it. We're the X. We're the Dogs. We're the Gators. We're whoever. That's gone. If you have any thinking like that in any way, forget it. And the notion that Florida is Georgia and Florida are basically the same school. Okay, so it's not like the difference between Ole Miss and Vandy. Okay, no. If Georgia can have tremendous academic success and athletic success, and football success, if Michigan can do that, if those two are the best two schools, and academically they won the national championship lately. But if they can do it, Florida certainly can. I mean, Florida's got a lot more advantages than Michigan does. I can assure you of that. But they're not. They're not. And they may be in the midst, and it may be the beginning, it may be in the middle. I think it's more in the middle, in the beginning middle than I do the end, of Georgia just whipping their ass for a while. I mean, that's completely possible too. But they're whipping their ass because of the lack of interest in wanting to really win. And, Auburn, I will give them this. They're not great at it all the time, but they know their people and they really want to win. Now, they act too quick sometimes, but they really want to win. Alabama, they really want to win. LSU, sometimes it feels like they do, sometimes they don't. Clemson is at a real crossroads right now. They're going to have to decide if they really want to win or not. Texas has decided they want to win. So everybody's not the same. Ohio State has always wanted to win. Alabama's always wanted to win, and then they put that together with Nick. Georgia's not always really wanted to win. Not in a way that they do now. I mean, they are dumping money into football. There is no, if Kirby wants to if he wants to take a tightrope walk, with one of those long things where he's doing it that way to Atlanta, they're like, oh yeah, we'll do that. We'll pull that off. You want to fly helicopter? Do you want to just fly? He ain't flying commercial like this. I mean, no head coach flies commercial. But my point is, there's nothing that they won't do to win, good or bad. And so they're collective. They know what they're doing. Everybody's going in the same direction at Georgia. Is that the case at Florida? Doesn't look like it to me.